Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Hey, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, I feel like I haven't seen you in like a week.
Yeah, that would be accurate because I was in Arizona all last week.
Oh.
And we tried to record and it just did not work.
No, that's okay. Sorry, everybody. We took a week off. Wasn't exactly planned as that, but that's what happened. But I'm happy because, Eric, you needed a break.
I did need a break.
Yeah.
It was nice. The weather was superb.
Mm-hmm. I think that the weather followed you back because it's been pretty good.
Yeah, it's like 50 plus right now, Fahrenheit, out in Minneapolis. So after this, I'm going to go outside and enjoy some of the weather. I got to run a lot in Arizona and got to push in as many burritos as I could. I just kept feeding them in.
You set up a conveyor belt?
Yep. That was my goal and mission accomplished.
Nice.
I put a lot of burritos in my face.
Sweet.
It was so good. The other thing I've been doing is I've been playing with this little toy billiards game I've been working on.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this idea to do instead of working on what I'm supposed to be doing, by the way, Kamran has let me know that I'm not supposed to be doing this. And so has my wife. But everyone's telling me that I should be. But I'm working on this billiards Balatro idea because Balatro content has my frontal lobe again. And I've been watching a ton of Balatro and playing a bunch of Balatro. And then I'm like, it would be kind of cool if I could combine this with like a billiards thing. So I've been working on this billiards prototype in Excalibur with some shaders to make it look 3D.
Sweet.
Anyway, that's what I've been working on.
That's cool. I think it would be neat if you could build your billiard set, like your balls. You know what I mean? Like each ball has like the 8-ball, the magic 8-ball that you can like change its power, or like there are different 8-balls you can collect. They all have different powers.
Oh yeah.
That would be kind of interesting. And it would be especially interesting if it's like different physics rules, like you hit a ball and it automatically hits the nearest 2 balls, even if they're, not next to it, or, things
That'd
like
be
that.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool.
It'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah. I feel like there's some meat on that bone, on that idea. So I've been playing around with that. I also went and figured out how to do the polychrome effect that Balatro has on their cards.
Yeah.
So I figured out how to do that in shaders.
Nice.
So I posted that on the Discord.
That's cool. Very nice. Well, while you were gone, I did get a chance to work on Keep Track My Games. So as people know, I've been working on shipping that feature for playthrough and completion tracking. So I finally named the update. So the last update I did was called the Pelegiad update, which is a city in Morrowind, because that's how my updates are named after, is Elder Scrolls cities. So P stood for playthrough tracking. But I was like, well, playthrough tracking is also part of this one. So but there's no other cities that are named with P. So I was like, well, what about completion tracking? Because that's a new feature. And so I decided on the Coral update, which is not a city from Morrowind. It's actually a city from Oblivion, but that's cool. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to keep in the Elder Scrolls universe.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking just now as I said it, I could do the Caldera update because that is a city in Morrowind, but whatever. It's fine.
Yeah, it's all good.
I can always change it if I need to. But otherwise, I got an offer from Pluralsight to update one of my previous courses. And they said, hey, this is kind of a priority. If you want to do it, you can put your current course on hold. That's fine. We just want this updated. And by the way, more people might view it. So are you interested? And I said, yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm working on right now. It's going to be a refresh of my personal AI agents course, and I'm going to be introducing a new tool because in the first one, I just talk about Zapier to create like no-code agents. But now I'm going to be talking about a low-code tool called Flowwise to be able to create multiple agents working together and integrate them into other tools. So anyway, I'm excited about that. So that's what I'm working on right now. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. So we missed a full week of news. So we're going to catch up on that. In addition, we're also going to cover last week's news. So This is news for the weeks of February 2nd and February 9th.
Yes.
What's the headliner? Hit it.
The headliner, if you didn't catch it, the TypeScript 6.0 beta just dropped. Not that long ago. I think it was like last week.
It was last week, yep.
There's a lot of stuff in here to digest. TLDR, this is the bridge release between the current version of TypeScript and TypeScript 7.0.
Yes.
Which is going to be the Go-based.
Right. So there's going to be a bunch of deprecations, and there's going to be things that are turned on by default, including strict. Strict is on by default.
That's right. TSC init. TSC init, I think, already did that.
Yes.
So drop a TS config that had strict. But now if you run TSC on the command line, the default command line experience is also strict.
Yes.
Which was kind of a foot gun.
Yeah. So that's the nuance there, I guess I was trying to get at. Is that previously, I think in 5.9, if you did TSC init, strict was on by default. But this is if you run TSC on the command line, now it's going to be strict by default as well.
So some of the big features in 6, apart from being this bridge, is now they have less context sensitivity on thisless functions. That's THIS-LI. I can't spell.
You can't spell. It's thisless. So
thisless functions.
You know the this keyword? It's functions
keyword
without the this keyword.
Yes. Anyway, what's happening is TypeScript is going to skip over contextually sensitive functions during type argument interface inference. Instead, it'll check and infer from other arguments first. If skipping over the context-sensitive functions doesn't work, inference just continues across any unchecked arguments going left to right on the list. So this will just effectively, they have what does this really mean for you?
It's hard to explain. And this might be easier if you go look at the blog post because there's a bunch of code examples. But essentially, this just makes TypeScript a bit less sensitive to the this keyword so that it can better understand and infer the types of function parameters, it seems like.
That's right. Yeah. So in some of their examples, the arrow function worked without errors. And then if you have the method syntax, you would get errors. And this just helps make things just work a little smoother.
Yeah. So I guess if you do use a lot of function syntax instead of arrow function syntax or method syntax, this helps you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Definitely.
Cool. Next up, they added the ability to do subpath imports that start with a hash symbol. And so this was added to Node first, and now TypeScript supports this. So you can add to your package JSON, there's a field called imports, and it's similar to the paths alias type stuff. So you could say hashtag root/star should map to my dist directory /star. And it says this allows modules in your package to import from hashtag root instead of having to use a relative path like .. So it's like path aliases, right? And the thing is that previously you could not use the hashtag symbol for root aliases in TypeScript, and now that's fixed in 6.0.
One cool one is they're combining module resolution bundler, which is a type of module resolution behavior, like how do I find modules, with module common JS. And module is just what kind of module are we using? How are we shipping packets of code around? So this PR removes the restriction preventing module resolution bundler from being used with module type common JS. So the error messages now include common JS as a valid module option with the bundler resolution.
Okay.
This will affect people mostly in the Webpack, my code is just working space. Don't break me. So there's that. TLDR, this is another combination of settings that you can have that are valid. And it makes sense. If you are using, if you're using common in the past, your code has been working and you're moving forward, this just helps you move into the future.
Okay, so if I was in this scenario, I might need to update my TS config so that I set module resolution bundler and then common JS as my module type.
Yeah. And in their blog post, they say what you probably want to do is you want to look at planning a migration out of this situation if you're using module common JS. Remember, common JS is old school. Like
that's the require statement.
Yeah. You probably don't want to be using common JS. But if your code's working, it's working, right? But what you probably want to do is you want to move to either Node Next or Preserve or something else.
Mm-hmm.
You want to plan a migration off of common JS, TLDR.
Yep. Because, Node.js and Bun and Deno, they all support ECMAScript imports now. ECMAScript modules. So this is a migration path.
Yes.
Cool. The next flag is a new flag in the config called stable type ordering. This is intended to assist if you want to move from 6.0 to 7.0. So I'll just read what it says, but it says, today, TypeScript assigns type IDs, which are internal tracking numbers, to types in the order they are encountered, and uses these IDs to sort union types in a consistent manner. A similar process occurs for properties. As a result, the order in which things are declared in a program can have, possibly, surprising effects on things like declaration omit. This is really interesting because I'm pretty sure that we've run into this trying to use TSGo for Excalibur. And when I did a diff of the declaration files, some of the ordering of different types were different. And so this is something that you might want to turn on so that you can get ready to go to 7.0. So if you turn on stable type ordering, then it's going to do some fancy stuff to stabilize the way that it orders the types, but that could result in different declaration omit changes. So you're going to want to test it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is kind of, I think where this might affect you principally is like DX. So depending on the ordering of your types, you might get suggestions in different orders. So this is definitely something to take a look at. And I think it's something that you're probably going to want to hammer on in the editor.
Yes. Yep. And it does say if you encounter a type error using stable type ordering, it's typically going to be due to inference differences. So the previous inference without stable type ordering happened to work based on the current ordering of types in your program, which is, just as a side effect, it worked. But to help with this, you'll often benefit from providing an explicit type somewhere. And often this will be a type argument or a variable annotation for an argument you intend to pass into a call. So that's why it's under a flag, because it could change your code and it could cause a breaking change. But you'll want to turn this on if you do intend to migrate to TypeScript 7.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a soft B break.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because I feel like this is going to mostly affect you in a DX situation.
Mm-hmm.
It might affect you in the inference, like you said, and you might fail, depending on the complexity of your types, I imagine.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so some features, couple new features. There's now an ES 2025 option for target and lib. So while there are no new JavaScript language features in ES 2025, this new target does add new types for built-in APIs like regex escape, and moves a few declarations from ESNext into ES 2025, like promise.try, iterator methods, which is pretty cool, and set methods. So that's pretty nice. If you want to, downgrade from ESNext, you could do ES 2025 as your new stable target if you want to, but obviously you don't have to. But the next set of new types is pretty cool because we have been talking about temporal, and temporal has been now released in all major browsers except Safari.
Womp womp.
Yep, but there are now new types for temporal in TypeScript 6.0. It says here that the long-awaited temporal proposal has reached stage 3 and is expected to be added to JavaScript in the near future. TypeScript 6.0 now includes built-in types for the temporal API, so you can start using it in your TypeScript code today via target ESNext. Or lib ESNext. Or you could also import the lib temporal.ESNext if you really want to be more granular.
Next up is new types for the upsert method, which is not what it's called. You couldn't see, but I was doing quotes with my fingers. It's called get or insert, but this is doing that common pattern where you're checking for a key, and if key doesn't exist, you're going to set it with the default value. So this is just extremely common, so common that we've added it to ECMAScript.
Yeah, and this is specifically on map and weak map. Cool. What's interesting is we didn't talk about this previously, but There's also get or insert computed. This is for cases where the default value might be expensive to compute. So that's kind of cool too.
Yeah, no, I totally missed that when that was coming through. Kind of like a lazy computation of this expensive value. Lastly, we have types for regexp .escape, and this is just nice when you want to escape something in your regex and you don't have to think about it very high. You remember when we used to do like MySQL escape or like that kind of thing? This is the same idea. Like you can escape special regular expression characters like wildcard plus question mark without having to worry about you accidentally vulnerability your regular expression.
Yeah. So this is, I think, really common if you need to substitute some expression, like a sub-expression inside of your regex string. You can run it through regex escape, and it'll make sure that whatever input you're going to substitute has the right escape characters in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I often feel like I need to escape regex whenever I work with it. So, ba-doom, ba-doom, pa. All right. What else is there? There's a few other things in here.
libdom now contains a DOM iterable and async iterable.
Yeah,
so that's just
we talked about
this.
That just
happens. You don't have to remember to do this. That just happens.
Yeah, we talked about this on the TypeScript 6.7 episode, but dom.iterable and dom.async iterable are now just fully included in lib.dom.d.ts. So that's kind of nice.
This one has bitten me before because I've had to reach for iterables recently a lot, and I'm like, got to include that. And now it's just part of the thing. So that'll just be nice.
Yeah. This blog post is humongous, and it goes through every single deprecation in TypeScript 6 that you need to prepare for. It would be really hard for us to go through it on the podcast in audio. So we're actually going to do one of our first videos on our YouTube channel where we're going to talk through each of these deprecations, and we will show you the blog post and walk through it. So you can look forward to that. That will be released as a bonus episode. But just as a reminder, TypeScript 6.0 is the transition to TypeScript 7.0. There are ways that you can ignore the deprecations, but just be aware that it's going to break. Your code base will break if you move to TypeScript 7 and you don't update for these deprecations. So you can look forward to that. All right.
Awesome. Next on our list, ESLint version 10.
Version 10.
That's been released. This is huge. So there are a few highlights here. Well, 10.0 is pretty awesome. Not a lot of projects get to 10.0. So that's pretty cool. The big thing is that Node.js less than version 20.19, the whole 21x line, the whole 23x line are no longer supported.
Yeah, because those are no longer long-term support or even short-term support versions. So yeah, they've been deprecated.
As of this post, Node 24x is the LTS release, and we're dropping support for all of these versions below that. So I believe the next line after the LTS is the 25 line.
Yes.
They didn't say anything about that. I can only assume that's also support. They've posted up a really in detail migration guide of like breaking changes. So
there's a laundry list.
There's a big one. So we'll include the migrate to 10.0 blog post, but there's a number of breaking changes for users of ESLint, and then there's a number of breaking changes for plugin developers and integration developers. I think no matter what side of ESLint you're on, you're going to want to take a look at this.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that's probably going to affect you is the configuration file changes. Because you might be familiar with the flat config rollout for ESLint. So ESLint RC, if you're using an ESLint RC file, it's been completely removed in 10.0. So this, you probably shouldn't have been using it in ES9 or ESLint 9, but in ESLint 10 they completely removed it. So there are changes you're going to have to make if you're doing that.
Yep. So a bunch of stuff in here. I think the biggest one is that the ESLint recommended list is now updated, and 3 new rules have been enabled. So no unassigned vars, no useless assignment, and preserve caught error. So those are like the big things that might catch you up because they're going to be turned on.
Nice. All right. Moving on, we got some Deno news.
Yes, Deno deploy is now generally available.
No longer in preview.
Yeah. So this is a big vote of confidence, I think, that the team has in the product. So this is pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think a few things to clarify because it is named Deno deploy, but it actually supports all major JavaScript frameworks, regardless of whether you are building or running with Deno. Not only that, it will automatically detect which framework you're using and run the build commands specific to your framework. This allows us to make the most of your framework's features, such as the use cache directive in Next.js 16. So I think that's important. Important to say is that this is not just for Deno apps.
And this looks a lot like the Netlify model, where just point your repo at our serverless cloud host and we'll figure it out and deploy it.
Yes.
Which feels nice. They also added a new safe instant compute with Deno Sandbox. So that's pretty cool. You can take a look at these sandboxes, and they are saying that these are going to be great for LLM generated code and that kind of thing. So you can put these in a little sandbox. You can allow, full isolation from like your current process. So they can't go and steal your secrets.
Yeah,
prompt inject you.
That's interesting.
Like that.
So I assume that the sandboxes are something you can programmatically initiate from your Deno deployed application.
That's right. You import sandbox from @Deno/sandbox.
Wow.
You can just create them, and then you can directly run files in them. And the way that they work is they're Linux micro VMs that boot in under a second.
Cool.
So you got a little VM that you can hand out.
That's really neat.
And run.
Yeah. That could also be super useful for like processing files or like user input. Like if you get a user needs to import some stuff, you don't like fully trust them because you should never trust user input.
Mm-hmm.
You can run that as a separate workload in like a Deno sandbox. That's neat.
Yeah. So some examples that they have on this blog post, again, Astro is a big one. They have an Astro template. You can just go and click and deploy an Astro project. They have Fresh, obviously, which is their framework, and then Next.js, which is a popular one by the Triangle company.
Very good. We have talked about Deno KV, which is their key value store. But Deno deploy now supports Postgres databases. So it says not only can you link third-party databases, but thanks to our partnership with Prisma, you can now provision new databases for free right through our dashboard.
Ooh.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the dashboard looks really nice.
It does.
Like you get like a little script editor and you can go see like output, or like you can run your selects and you can do all your things that you might have done in the past.
This is a pretty interesting, alternative or competition to Supabase, because Supabase is Postgres, but now you can use Prisma with Deno deploy, which is pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They've got another new feature for local development tunneling, which is pretty interesting. One of the biggest headaches when deploying software is that a project that works locally behaves differently in production. Yeah, you're telling me. We've bridged those two environments, making it easy to develop locally with confidence using the flag --tunnel. Simply add the flag to your command and you will automatically pull centrally managed environment variables from Deno deploy, run your dev server locally, expose a public shareable URL instantly, and send telemetry data to Deno deploy. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's super nice.
I want this for my app to be able to do like mobile testing, to be able to like run it on my phone.
Yes.
Because right now it's kind of hard to like connect to my local host like through the IP address, because I have to listen on a IP address that is addressable within my local network, but not exposed publicly,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So there's things like ngrok you can use. This is almost like a built-in ngrok type of deal just for Deno deploy.
That's kind of what it feels like. Yeah, ngrok is super useful too. Like especially if you're ever doing like webhook development and you don't want to like deploy to a public endpoint to test, ngrok might be the way to do it.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that they don't mention here that might be worth talking about with your team is that it seems like it's a public URL, right? So if you have something sensitive, you maybe don't want to use this unless you do some firewall magic to make sure that people can't access it. Or maybe your app is protected already through like single sign-on, and yeah, you'll be fine.
Some access controls.
Right. But it's something to note.
one thing that's awesome for me is they've added first-class automatic observability, where they just do automatic OpenTelemetry instrumentation now through your app.
Yeah, I love
which
this.
is just chef's kiss.
It's so cool. It says, by default, Deno will capture the following: console.log, fetch, HTTP, V8 events, garbage collection, and I/O. Your logs will also be automatically associated with the request, so triaging and debugging is much simpler. Ooh, love that.
Yep.
So cool.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone does anything without OpenTelemetry now.
Yeah. Okay, so I know that I have this question. You probably have this question. How much is this all going to cost? So they do talk about pricing. Deno Deploy comes with a generous free plan offering 1 million requests per month, 100 gigabytes of egress, and 15 CPU hours. And then for those needing more resources, it's $2,000 a month. No, I'm just kidding. It's $20 a month. $20 a month will give you 5 million requests per month, 200 gigabytes of egress bandwidth, and 40 hours of CPU time. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's very,
and then after that,
it's very competitive.
It's a custom deal after that. So they have a contact us button if you need more than that for enterprise, and they say teams with greater security support and performance needs. So I imagine you're hammering out a deal in person with those ones.
Yeah. Cool. And then they've got a bunch of starter apps, including, like we said, an App Store project, but they've also got the new Deno Fresh and a Next.js site too. If you one-click deploy templates for you.
Next up, we have another React native remote code execution flaw, which is React just keeps taking their lumps. This is React native though, so
yeah, it's a little different.
It's a little different. It's not React proper. It's React native is kind of a orthogonal, slightly maybe parallel to React. It's enough of a browser to run React is the idea behind React native. In this exploit, cybersecurity company Vulncheck first observed this exploit, which has been named Metro for Shell, in December. It has a score of 9.8. I'll remind you that the maximum score is 10. So this allows remote, unauthenticated attackers to execute arbitrary operating system commands on the underlying host. So not awesome. So threat actors have weaponized the flaw to deliver base64 encoded PowerShell scripts. By the way, that's a super common delivery mechanism. As base64 encoded PowerShell scripts is a very popular way of delivering malware, for better or for worse. That does a series of actions, including adding antivirus exclusions for the current working directory and some temporary folders.
Nice.
So that's awesome. Yeah. So not good. So definitely update. This has been exploiting the flaw in the Metro development server. So that's the Metro for Shell. That's the Metro and Metro for Shell React native community /CLI package. So this is basically another dev server exploit. So if you run the Metro development server, it binds to external interfaces by default, which is a big no-no. This server exposes an endpoint that's vulnerable to these injection attacks, allows unauthenticated network attackers to just send a post. If you have like an Internet of Crap thing on your network that's been compromised, they can start looking for developer ports that are open and then just shoot malware at them. So,
oh boy,
not great.
Yep. So if you're a React Native developer, you want to upgrade your CLI. Cool. We do have a bunch of library watches that came out recently. We'll try to go through this fairly quickly. One of the things, if you're a Preact developer, you can now use TanStack query. It's been added, so that's pretty sweet. TanStack query is pretty popular in the TanStack space for doing client-side querying and like fetch requests and things like that. It's pretty useful for that.
Awesome. If you're a Nuxt developer, there's happy news. Nuxt Test Utils v4 is out, which now supports Vitest version 4.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty huge. Some of the highlights are better mocking support, register endpoint improvements, and they have a whole bunch of migration scripts to help you out.
Nice.
Next up, we have Handy, which is speak into any field, which is kind of neat. It's actually kind of a neat little like maybe accessibility tool.
Yeah.
But it's a free open source speech to text application that works offline, which I like that.
Yeah, that is really neat. Like you click onto a text field and some apps have like a microphone icon. You tap the microphone icon, you can talk to it, and then it does your speech to text into the input field.
It looks like this is built as a Tari application. It's the front end is React, TypeScript, Tailwind. The back end is Rust, as you might, you don't have to use Rust with Tari as the back end, but this one does. They use Whisper RS with the local speech recognition Whisper models, and they use Transcription RS with the CPU optimized versions of speech recognition with the Parakeet models. So those are the two local models that they'll use. And they use various other libraries, Rust libraries, to complete the whole ensemble.
I see. So this is a sort of universal speech-to-text application. So even if the app that you're using doesn't support speech-to-text in a text field, you can use this app to fill it
in. And it's open source, so that's pretty great.
That's pretty neat.
Next, Colyseus 017 is released. And if you're not familiar, this is a TypeScript-based multiplayer framework that is open source, or you can use their managed hosting service, which is a pretty common business model. But they have their source code here, but it's pretty nice. It allows you to make multiplayer servers really fast with TypeScript.
That's cool. I've got another TypeScript-based application. This one is called Tabularis. It is a lightweight developer-focused database management tool. And you're like, what databases, buddy? And it actually supports multiple databases, MySQL, Postgres, SQLite, I believe. Yeah, and it looks really nice. It's built with Tori. So here's another one built with Tori and React and TypeScript. But a little feature that they are selling is that it's AI friendly. So it comes with a built-in MCP server that can do stuff with your schema and with your database. Like you can issue queries to it from the MCP server. And it has an assistant built in to make modifications to your database and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely something to take a look at. It's free and open source. Yeah. And then lastly, we've talked about Electrobun before, but Electrobun is an Electron framework built on the Bun runtime and has some purportedly better way to do updates to an app. So it doesn't have to download full binaries for each update and instead downloads like diffs basically for your source code. And it's supposed to run faster and uses less memory allocation, but they have a brand new release for Electrobun. So you can go check that out.
Yeah, I think this feels like a really good use case for Bun and Electron. This just feels like a strong pairing.
Yeah. I mean, we hear all the time how, people are not a fan of Electron's huge memory footprint. And also, I just made an Electron app the other day, a little vibe coded app just for fun. I needed something really quick. The binary that it produced was like 178 megabytes, because it has to package up the entire runtime and an app and stuff. So yeah, something that's a little bit lighter weight would be pretty cool. All right. Should we move on to some community highlights?
We should.
Yeah. So just as a quick one, Void Zero has a new community blog post, What's New in ViteLand, January 2026. So you can learn about what's new in the community. But the other one that I wanted to cover just a little bit because it is specific to TypeScript and security, which is by Fetih Çelik. And he was a security researcher who found remote code execution exploits in Nation, which is a hosted service that lets you do like low code automation, sort of like Zapier and Pipedream. Nation is one of those. So you can actually write JavaScript expressions in your workflows and stuff. And he found some code exploits. Now, what's interesting is that they were based on some TypeScript issues in the code. So Nation is open source. So he's able to see there's actually like two or three different exploits that he found. And so when each one was fixed, he could go back into the code base and see, hey, can I figure out if there's another workaround or another exploit that I can use? So really, this just comes down to user input, and a user can input a JavaScript expression, and it didn't have any checks for you can move up the constructor chain in order to create a brand new function to invoke the new process object, which then gives you access to the child process, and you could spawn a remote code exploit, right? And so they did some stuff where they tried to sanitize you can't go up the constructor chain, right? But it was very much like a sort of a deny list type of, mitigation. So, for example, one of the exploits that he shows is to work around that. They were checking for the string like constructor, right? And that's not allowed. But with JavaScript, it's dynamic, right? So you can dynamically build a string using like string.charcode@. And sure enough, that's what he did to work around that. Okay, so he keeps sort of going through each of those exploits. But one of the things, one of the takeaways here is that the TypeScript types are not runtime types, right? And we've said this multiple times. So you always have to have runtime validation. And one of the things that this code did is it took in an unknown type, and it was correctly typed as unknown in the function parameter, but then they downcasted it to a string. So whatever value came in from JavaScript, they were just passing it to the string constructor, which converted whatever it was to a string. Whereas what it probably should have done is actually verify that the type of the parameter was a type of string versus like downcasting it, because that downcast allowed Fetih to work around it and create an exploit.
I think this is another thing that's important to know, is that the TypeScript types are not a security feature.
Right.
I think that's a big part of this, because they were leveraging, as far as I can tell, they're leveraging the AST generated from TypeScript to help them do this parsing. And I think that's not a bad idea, but I do think it's important that you can't really trust them. You know, that there's the types in TypeScript are a dev time feature and not a security one.
Yes. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot more to this, and it's a pretty long blog post and it goes into a lot of detail. So it's a very interesting read. So I would highly recommend just taking a look at it.
Next up, TypeRocks has a great video that is going to be a nice companion to our bonus episode on the TypeScript 6 beta. And Christian goes through all of the things that you'll need to be aware of, as well as what we said in the TypeScript 6 migration. So it might be a nice end cap as well.
Cool. And it'll probably be much more polished and nice, compared to the two fools talking through it.
That's right. Maybe.
All right. Finally, for you gamers out there, if you're a game dev, we just talked about Colyseus, which is that multiplayer platform. So somebody on Reddit posted a starter template called the TypeScript Online Game Template, and it's basically for like MMO style games. So they set it up with React, Phaser, which is the game framework, game engine, and then Colyseus, which is the multiplayer framework. It's got a game server built in. It's got a marketing site for you to sell your game, and it's got the game client. And he's got authentication built in that works across everything. So a user that signs into your marketing site also has their account set up to work with your game server. So it's all unified. And he has an example of server client game reconciliation, which is like the state management between the game server and the game client. He has an example of how to do that. Plus, he's got it hooked up to all the CI/CD flows to build your app. So I guess if you really want to build an MMO style game, you have no excuse not to use a boilerplate now. So this is a pretty cool boilerplate.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I have it on my to-do list to open a PR to add Excalibur as an option.
It would be neat. Yeah, it would be neat to be able to say, like, I want to create this MMO style game, but I want to just pick and choose what engine I want to use. Maybe you want to use Godot. Maybe you want to use Unity, the web version. Maybe you want to use Excalibur or Phaser or Kaboom or Kaplay or whatever.
All right. Lastly, I have my Bleet of the Week from Posts Inspector from Blue Sky user pippy.bluesky.social. And they write, using it to write Go that writes TypeScript, which generates TypeScript, which calls Go, which is given to an AI, which writes TypeScript. And my favorite is the reply, which is, "Are you winning, son?"
It's turtles all the way down.
It is turtles all the way down.
All right. You got some cool links. I know one of the things that you mentioned to me was that you did not open a laptop pretty much at all during your vacation. So
I didn't.
So really, you shouldn't have any cool links, but actually, I think you do.
Yeah, I do have some cool links, and one of them is, did you know that you can just use JSDoc to import TypeScript types?
Yeah.
Into your JS?
Yeah,
you can just do that.
I think there's a large swath of the community that does that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And in fact, I do that for my browser extension because of reasons, but it's mostly a real pain to get browser extensions to be transpiled from anything.
Mm-hmm.
So typically for some of them, it's just better to write them in JavaScript. and then you can pull in the types. So that's what I wind up using. And I'll link to an example here in the show notes.
Nice.
And then my other cool link is a bunch of esoteric math. So if you're a person that likes math games or like weird math things, I present vampire numbers and happy numbers to you.
What are those?
So happy numbers, if I remember right, if the sum of the squared digits reaches 1. So for example, the number 13 is a happy number. So you take the first digit, which is 1, you square it, and you add it to the second digit, 3 squared, which is 9, and that produces 10, and then you repeat, and then you're at 1.
Oh.
So those are happy numbers. So those are kind of fun. That's like a fun thing. And vampire numbers are a little trickier to explain, but suffice it to say, it involves fangs. So I'll let you read about that on Wikipedia.
Nice.
But there are fangs involved with
cool.
vampire numbers.
That is cool. Nice. I saw something from Dan Abramov on Blue Sky, and I'm not even sure what it really is, but it is cool. So if you go to the link that I have in the show notes, it is named Virtual Domain Specific Languages via Embedded Projectional Editing. And I guess it's based on like a paper. But if you look at the code, it is like English language, domain-specific language that then gets translated into the actual like TypeScript code or like the actual like runtime code, which is pretty interesting. So there is a grammar to it, but it's like a virtual DSL. So it's not its own language. It just gets translated into the actual language that it is virtually representing. And so I think what it's supposed to be is sort of an example of maybe this is like closer to what an LLM could write because it's interspersed with English language. And so it's a little bit more loosey-goosey. Like you can say like log hello world to console and there's like no quotes or anything, right? It just knows that hello world is part of the DSL. And so then it translates that to console.log hello world, right? So there's a lot less for the LLM to get wrong. Now, I don't know if this was intended for like generative AI tools. It looks like this was written in 2023, the paper, and it was on generative programming. And so, this is kind of interesting, but it's a live demo for the paper. So I guess if you want to read the paper from the ACM, you could definitely take a look.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I saw was someone maybe you want to follow on Blue Sky because they are building an NES JRPG. And I love JRPGs. So
yeah, that's so cool.
I don't know if you've ever played Shining Force, I think it was.
No, I haven't.
That was not on NES. That was I think it was on Sega, but that was kind of a fun RPG I remember playing. But yeah, this is very much like if you enjoy the original Final Fantasy type stuff, they are building something that looks and feels very similar.
That's cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, time for the Minnesota long goodbye. I think we're going to try to keep it to a short goodbye.
Short goodbye.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things here. TypeScript 7 is coming very soon, apparently.
Yeah.
But there's going to be things that you need to do for TypeScript 6.0 when that reaches, when it's out of beta, when it's released. So I think one of the next steps that you'll want to do right now is to maybe upgrade your project to the 6.0 beta. And then just like get a sense of what do you need to change? Like what deprecations affect you that you're going to need to modify in order to be able to adopt 7.0.
Yeah. I think the two big ones that I think might bite you are going to be that stable type ordering. If you're a library, for example, and you rely on completions as part of your DX, your developer experience, I think that might be a thing to take a very close look at. And then the other that I think might bite you is the module deprecations and the module resolution deprecations.
Yeah. And
so I think those are really important to take a close look at.
Those are so confusing that we had to do like multiple takes in order to just understand what the deprecations really were. So that's why we decided that, the blog post was so long that we started to talk about it during this episode. And then afterward, we're like, you know what? That took so long that and it also is, it's confusing because you all can't see like what we're looking through, like on the blog post. But because the code samples are there, it's a lot easier to show you what those deprecations mean if we can just scroll through the blog post. So that's why we decided, let's cut that from this episode. And so I apologize for, some of the rough cuts there, but we're just going to publish that as a second bonus episode. And I think it's going to make more sense too, because then you could just listen to that episode if it's relevant to you. Like if you don't plan to upgrade to TypeScript 6.0 anytime soon, then you can just skip the episode. But otherwise, if you're gearing up for the upgrade, then I think just having that visual of simply seeing the blog post as we read through it, I think that's going to be helpful. It's also a teaser to something that we might do in the future, which is maybe we will, have our screen shared and go through these, in the show notes, just go through each of the things that we're talking about. So we're trying to experiment with it and see what 2026 brings for the future of TypeScript FM, but I feel like that's what we'll leave you with.
Face reveal, what?
Yeah.
I think all of you have seen our faces.
Oh my God. I remember that, who's that guy that was like the bassist? And he's like Italian, I think. And
Fetih 504.
Yeah, I think so. I think
that's it.
And he did that face reveal sort of meme, which is pretty funny, even though he had his face in all of his videos.
Davey 504. Excuse me.
504, yes.
Davey,
yes.
It's not Fetih, it's Davey 504.
There you go.
Which, if you haven't watched his YouTube channel, he is very hilarious. He does a lot of music-related humor.
Now, do you think that that's where the phrase "that slaps" like originally came from? Was him, or did he get it from somebody else? Because that's where I first heard it.
Yeah, I definitely use "that slaps" a lot, and his delivery of "that slaps" is quite humorous.
Yes, I agree. Anyway, that's how old we are. All right, cool. Well, you have a good rest of your week. And listeners, we'll see you soon.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at kamronigus.com, and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.